Saints Row 2022 back at launch had to be one of the most disappointing and buggy games I have played in recent years. Not only that, but it took a franchise I absolutely adored and proceeded to smear Dookie all over it, and after completely bugging out on my Xbox playthrough, making it impossible to even finish the main story, I said to myself I'd never play this game again. That was until recently when I saw it for free on the PlayStation Plus store, and with the 51 trophies including the platinum, I thought this would be a good one to go for. At this point it has been over a year since its initial release, so surely it's got to be better, right? Surely they've fixed the game. No more bugs, everything works. Spoiler alert, no, they haven't. Regardless, this is the story of how Tommy Vercetti and his friends established their criminal organisation in Santo Ileso, and how I obtained the Platinum Trophy for Saints Row. Enjoy. We begin the game in a flash forward where we see that the Saints at this point in time are seemingly doing pretty well for themselves and are having themselves an extravagant party, and where we get our first glimpses at our gang and some of the main characters. Well, if you can actually even call any of these people gang members. During the party, we are semi-introduced to the businessman named Antonio Espina, who wanted to meet with the boss, who just so happens to be our main character, with hopes of being able to come to some kind of agreement. And it is here we are introduced to and able to create the boss. Now, I already knew who I wanted to play as, and so before loading up the game, I went onto the boss factory and found the best looking budget Tommy Vercetti I could find, which, believe me, saved me about 40 minutes worth of creation. We tell our friend Antonio that we'll talk business after the party before going on to tell the other rival gangs to go do one, and that the Saints are here to stay, and a short while later find our man Tommy being buried alive. At this point we flash back to a few months earlier where the story and the game truly begins. At this point the Saints hadn't even been formed, and our boy Tommy here had a much different lifestyle. You see, we had just started our new job as a mercenary for Marshall Defense Industries, and while en route to our target we take the time to watch some of the training videos as well as inquire about the healthcare package, because, you know, now is the best time to be doing that. Gwen, our commanding officer, then tells us that our target is the Nawale, apparently a very dangerous man, as he's already took out one whole team that has been sent to bring him in. And with that, it was time to storm the battlefield, and within seconds our whole squad is wiped out by turrets and explosions, leaving us as the only survivor, and we now had no option but to push on towards Bravo team, murdering absolutely everyone in our path. This mission basically acts as an introduction to the game's combat, which I've come to expect in nearly every game that I play now. Nothing different here, learn the controls and kill loads of enemies. We eventually meet up with Bravo team and make our move on Silver Gulch Saloon. Inside we find the Nawale, however he manages to make his escape by hijacking one of the Marshall VTOLs. We of course aren't going to let him get away and attempt to hijack him back, which ends up in, to be fair, for this game, a pretty decent little fight scene.
Not too predictable.
It ends up in us bringing down the VTOL and successfully capturing the Nawale. All in all, I'd say mission accomplished.
I caught him!
Well, apparently we were the only ones who thought so, because we got a tidy little performance bonus of nothing. Yep, a big fat $0, which just goes to show that no matter how well you perform, if you don't remember your place, it doesn't mean anything to anyone. With performance bonus in hand, it was time to jump into our dusty looking truck and head home, during which our boy Tommy releases some of that pent up anger. Although a bit cringy in a Saints Row game, you can't lie, we've all had a moment like this. We eventually make it home where we are introduced to our three best friends. You have Nina, a Penteros gang member with a love for art and mechanics, Kevin, an avid DJ and baker, a member of the Idols gang, and finally Eli, a lover of LARP, the brains of the group, and a man with high ambitions. Together we come to the realization that we won't be able to afford rent and decide the best way to remedy that is to rob a payday loan place in broad daylight with absolutely no disguise. Not even a mask, because why not, right?
The cops will get to you before my people do.
Nice left.
Been practicing.
This ends up in us having to make our escape across the desert of Santo Eliso, which, to be fair, again results in quite a cool cutscene as we see Nina have her own little Fast and Furious moment.
You called for a ride?
You said you didn't want to risk your car.
I said I didn't want to risk it for rent. I'd risk anything for you, dummies.
And after completing the mission, it's at this point we are given almost complete freedom to explore Santo Eliso, and that's exactly what I do, with my first stop being the Style app to see what clothing I had and actually unlock a trophy for opening the Style app for the first time. We then customise a weapon, unlocking us another trophy. And during this stage we are also introduced to side hustles, and we will need to complete all of these for another trophy later. Side hustles are essentially short little side activities that you can complete to earn cash and XP. I'm not going to talk about them too much here as that will come later on, but for now we complete one of these side hustles and unlock another trophy. Day 2 of our new job, and this time we were tasked with following a Los Panteros convoy that was transporting a stolen artifact known as the Hummingbird Codex, and are also introduced to JR. Of course, things don't quite go to plan and are forced into combat. We proceed to make our way up the convoy, which eventually leads to Sergio making a personal appearance in an attempt to run us over with his monster truck. We of course made light work of his monster truck and then make our move onto the main transport, which ends up in the truck flying off of the edge of the cliff with the artifact landing below. We clear out the area of the remaining enemies, which again ends in a pretty decent cutscene. I will just say this while I'm here, this game does have its moments with scenes like this, but most of these only really come early on during the game, and everything else is kind of lacking and leaves the rest of the game to fall flat. Anyway, after dealing with the Panteros and obtaining the Codex, it was mission accomplished. Nina texts us and let us know that she isn't best pleased at my attack on the Los Panteros, but this is as far as the confrontation on the matter goes. Good news is, CEO of Marshall Defense, Atticus Marshall, is pleased with our performance, and we was getting a pretty decent performance bonus. In fact, we were officially getting a promotion, and it is only our second day. Turns out that Antonio Espina, you may remember from the opening cutscene, is a director of the History Museum and personally requested that we are brought in as head of security for the upcoming showcase of the Codex. Turns out though that everyone for some unknown reason wants to get their hands on the Hummingbird Codex, as the party gets crashed by both the Los Panteros and the Idols in an attempt to steal the Codex, and obviously we need to stop that from happening. Now, something that annoys me many times throughout this game is that almost nothing is really explained. Everything is just kind of there for the sake of being there. This mission is a great example. I mean, we still have no idea what the Codex actually even is, nor do we know what the intentions are behind everyone who seems to want it, and it is never explained at all throughout the story. The story isn't overly great anyway, but it just feels like they really didn't care about expanding on anything that they were building up. Anyway, with the rant out of the way, back to the story. We eventually managed to fight off the majority of the incoming Panteros and Idols members, and in the process managed to save a high-ranking board member of Marshall by the name of Myra Starr. However, during the firefight, the museum and priceless artifacts had been destroyed, and the Idols had managed to steal the Hummingbird Codex, leaving Atticus Marshall absolutely pissed, and as a result, ends up in Tommy being fired.
The hell you can. You're fired.
What?
You're done. If I see you on Marshall property again, I'll have you shot.
Sucks that we lost our job, but on the bright side, it does unlock us another trophy. This leads to our main man falling into a bout of depression, and it turns out that we weren't the only one. Nina was also down in the dumps due to recent events, so we decided that the best way to make ourselves feel better was to buy knives. Lots and lots of knives. After spending all of our rent money on new knives, Nina eventually receives a text from Sergio informing her that the Los Panteros are planning on attacking an ongoing idols party, which just so happens to be the exact same party that Kevin and Eli are attending, and knowing this will likely end badly, we head straight to the party to save them. We rush over as quick as we can, but unfortunately we wasn't quick enough and Eli ends up taking a bullet. We get to the party and proceed to clear the area of Los Panteros and make our way through the venue until we find Kevin and Eli. It's at this point a member of the Idols Collective orders Kevin to turn on us to prove his loyalty, but luckily for us, Kevin has seen Fast and Furious and knows that nothing is stronger than family, and proceeds to turn on the idols. We then proceed to wipe out his former friends before making our escape. Of course, we can't even afford rent money, let alone hospital fees, so we take Eli back to the apartment and patch him up there. While doing this, Tommy decides now is the prime time to decide that instead of being in other gangs and working for other people, why don't we just create our own and work for ourselves, or as this game likes to say, be our own boss. Of course, everyone agrees and thinks this is a great idea, but before we can make it to the top of the criminal empire, we must first find and establish a home base, as the apartment definitely isn't going to cut it. But that church we saw in the beginning of the game would be perfect. One slight issue with that plan though is that the church is currently owned and the owner has brought in a demolition company to bring it down. So we decide to do a little bit of demolition of our own before finding the owner and taking him on a ride he'll never forget. Believe it or not, he enjoyed it so much he even gave us the deeds to the church as a thank you. What an absolute legend. We get back to the church, share the good news, come up with a name and officially launch the start of the Saints criminal empire, which also unlocks us another trophy. From here we begin to solidify our control of Santo Eliso, but to do that we needed both money and a good crew. For the money situation, we decided that investing in some business ventures is the way forward, with our first investment being in Jim Rob, the guy we met back during the Los Panteros convoy mission. You see, he wants to get his repair garage up and running, and we do this by making our way around to numerous Los Panteros hangout spots, killing all of the gang members and destroying all of their car parts, because, you know, it's not like a repair garage needs those car parts, but whatever, we'll just buy new ones, I guess. Doing this though does unlock us the landlord trophy for building our first criminal venture. And believe it or not, but we also unlock another trophy for customizing our first vehicle. After establishing our first criminal venture with plenty more to go, we now needed to hire a good enough crew to protect our businesses. We do this by heading to Boot Hill and taking part in a Fight Club show hosted by Doc Ketchum, and that's broadcasted to the people of Santo Eliso. Although if the contestants in this show were anything to go by, I don't think they'd be doing much protecting, seeing as one guy just wiped out the whole island. Regardless, they'll have to do. Now that we've got some dollar and we've got a semi-capable crew, I decided to take a bit of a break from the story and give some attention to our friends and their loyalty missions, as there is a trophy for completing them all later on. First we had Kevin's loyalty missions, none of which I felt really built on him as a character. We drove around to numerous FB drive-thrus looking for a limited edition mecha burger, which ends up in us just killing a bunch of idols and stealing a massive shipment of them. Then Kevin gets kidnapped and we have to go and rescue him. Turns out the idols were pissed about the mecha burger situation and wanted revenge, so they kidnapped him, strapped him to the top of a sign and was planning on blowing up the whole thing, so of course we had to go and save him and disarm all of the bombs before proceeding to fly down to the nearby mansion and wipe out the idols who organised it. Before all of this though, we actually had to track him down, which ended up taking us to an idols camp, and we got information on Kev's whereabouts from one of the idols by locking him in the porta potty and proceeding to destroy the idols camp with it. During that though, we did unlock the Wrecking Ball trophy for killing an enemy with a towed object. At this point you'd think his last mission would surely be getting revenge on the idols. Nope, I mean, we do kill idols in this mission, but that's only to recover our packages that they had stolen from our doorstep. Of course, we wanted these back because they were all of the knives that we had ordered earlier on. We did, however, get a collectible as a reward for completing the mission, which ended up unlocking us the Finders Keepers trophy for obtaining 5 collectibles in the collectibles app. Eli's missions were up next, and honestly perhaps my favourite missions in the whole game. Eli's loyalty missions had us joining him in this year's LARP event, where initially we joined to help him grind enough XP to join House Duststorm. This ends up turning into us creating our own house, House Sandy Kraken, and bringing down the other houses before making a move on the king. We even get Nina involved, and with her help managed to conjure the barrel rod that helped us on our final attack. We also find out that Gwen, our commanding officer back at Marshall, also LARPed herself. But in the end, she was so desperate to not lose she began to cheat, so we had to smite her down a few times. Lastly, we had Nina's loyalty missions, although we couldn't complete all of them just yet. The ones we could do consisted of us helping Nina track down her car that the Pinteros had stolen from her, only to find out that Sergio had the car and was planning on dumping it into the ravine. Unfortunately, we were too slow and Sergio succeeded on that, and that's when Nina reveals to us that the car was actually her mother's. However, she unfortunately passed away and she promised that she would help look after it. A pretty sad moment, but we did end up helping Nina get revenge by going over to the Los Panteros Forge and bringing the place down, in which Nina also managed to get a new car out of it. There's also a few side missions for the Saints that I completed during this time, and in return increased my Empire tier, which unlocked us the A Young Empire trophy for reaching Empire tier 2. Now, back to the story. We end up coming to the conclusion that we needed to pull off the ultimate job in order to get us recognised as a criminal organisation. We decide the best course of action is to rob a Federal Reserve train as it comes through Santo Eliso, but to do that we need some help from a very powerful man, the Nawale. Yeah, that same guy we locked up at the beginning of the game, well, he's an incredibly deadly assassin and we were about to go and break him back out. I expected this to be a lot harder than it actually was, seeing as we were about to break into a maximum security prison, but it was actually a walk in the park. Seeing as we still had our old Marshal uniform, we just kind of strolled in like we owned the place, broke him out and strolled back out. After saving the Nawale, we decided before the big train heist we would have a day of team building exercises so that the Nawale could get to know us a little bit better. This goes quite well and he even ends up enjoying himself. Eventually, the Federal train makes its run through Santo Eliso and we decide it's time to hit the train. Now, just in true Tommy Vercetti fashion, we even wore a disguise this time. Yes, I'm that sad and have tried to go with the same outfit from Vice City. Don't judge me. Using some hover bikes we had stolen earlier, we board the train and start making our way up and through the carriages, clearing out all of the Marshal troops in our path. All of a sudden, the Los Panteros show up and decide they want in on the haul that we were about to take as well, leading to Sergio himself jumping on the train personally to kill us and get the cash. But that didn't work out quite well for him as the Nawale made extremely short work of him. After dealing with Sergio, we steal the cash, make our escape, and of course the best way to celebrate this kind of win is with a money fight.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Slow down.
We'd almost kill Kev.
I was in the moment.
You dumb son of a bitch.
I am so sorry, Kevin.
At this point, I then took the time to complete a few more side missions, one of these being one of the Saints missions that we can do to rank up our tier, and this ranked us up to tier 3, unlocking us the Power Players trophy.
Hello again.
This place is...
And the next side mission we did just so happened to be our final loyalty mission. This time we were back with Nina and today she wanted to acquire some sculptures created by artist Nazani Fisher, but she wanted to do this completely legit, as in actually purchasing them. Although she had good intentions, every time she rung up an owner of one of these pieces, they seemed to go into detail about how badly the sculpture is treated before hanging up or just straight up declining, which of course leads us to stealing them anyway. Upon completing the mission though, we did unlock the Quality Time trophy for completing all of the loyalty missions. Continuing on with the story, we once again find ourselves in a meeting thinking of ways to establish ourselves as a criminal organisation that's here to stay, when Kevin comes up with the idea of stealing the Hummingbird Codex back from the idols. Just so happens that they are keeping the Codex on a nearby party boat. We of course crash the party, murder all of the idols on the boat and steal the Codex for ourselves. Everything was looking good and going to plan. However, upon getting back to the church, we discovered that when Tommy had initially signed up to join Marshall, he had signed an agreement that basically gave Marshall ownership of anything that he did or started up that would cause any kind of competition. In this case, it was the Saints. We of course aren't about to let Marshall take everything we have worked this hard for, so we go straight to the source, the Marshall Tower. While fighting our way to the top of the tower, we managed to knock out 2 miscellaneous trophies. One was the Food for Thought trophy for staggering an enemy with a vending machine, although I actually have no idea where this vending machine I apparently hit even was.
How'd you get up here?
And the second was the Pick and Fights trophy for defeating a mini-boss from each faction. Now, once at the top of the tower, we expected to find Atticus Marshall, however he wasn't there, and instead we found Myra Starr, the Marshall board member that we had rescued back at the museum, and she has a proposition for us. If we helped her convince the rest of the board that Atticus Marshall needs to go, she would be able to take lead of Marshall Defense Industries and in return give ownership of the Saints back to us. We do this by stealing one of the Marshall AI controlled tanks that are being showcased and proceed to wreak havoc throughout the city, causing Marshall stock prices to absolutely plummet. This leads the board members of Marshall to panic and in turn choose to vote Atticus Marshall out of leadership, with the honours of firing him being left to us.
Atticus Marshall, you are fired.
Get your hands off me! You haven't heard the last of Atticus Marshall!
And true to Myra's word, she returns ownership of the Saints to us. This in turn takes us right back to the beginning of the game with the events of the party. During the party, the Nawali proceeds to congratulate us on what we have built with our friends, and that in a way, this is something he had always wanted, and in an act of jealousy proceeds to stab us in the gut, leaving us for dead. This turned out to be one of the weirdest twists I have seen in any game that I've ever played. Rather than just joining our crew and being a 5th member in our friendship group, he wanted to physically take our place and have everything that we had. And honestly, being the type of the character the Nawali is, this is something that I would never have expected, but the betrayal did unlock us another trophy, so I'm not complaining too much. While unconscious, we enter some kind of dream afterlife where Tommy recollects all of the good times he had with his friends before quickly being reminded that the Nawali now has everything we hold dear. This in turn gives Tommy the strength to regenerate his wounds like he's Deadpool and digs himself out of his grave. We go back to the party to find that the Nawali had killed numerous members of the Saints and had kidnapped our friends. We then head over to Silver Gulch, back where it all began, with the hopes of finding the Nawali. He, however, was nowhere to be found, and so we proceeded to kill his men until someone gave up his location.
Anyway, secret bunker address is in there.
Thanks, man.
I'm George, by the way.
You're an alright guy, George. When you wake up, you should stop by the church. The Saints could use a guy with some common sense.
It was now time for the final showdown. We make our way to the abandoned casino that the Nawali is hiding at, fight our way through his little band of buddies before ending this once and for all. With the Nawale now dealt with, our friends saved, and the Saints being a major player in Santo Eliso, this brings us to the end of the story, unlocking us our final story related trophy. With the main story finally complete, I can now move on to the massive stage that was cleanup. And what you're seeing in the background now is gameplay and trophy pops for the things that I did during that. I could talk about this on a trophy by trophy basis, but honestly it was pretty boring and tedious, and we'd be here forever just going over the trophies. But I will run through what we needed to do. So for this we needed to fully complete all 15 districts, which involved completing all of the side hustles, many of which could only be completed after completing the previous one. We needed to complete all discoveries in each district. These usually consisted of like photo opportunities, dumpster diving, and like drug pallets. Luckily these could all be collected at any point, so I didn't have to do any backtracking to previous districts to get more later, which I'm very thankful for because there was a lot of backtracking involved in this step. We needed to visit every store and purchase an item, which would also unlock us a trophy. This was again very easy. And we also needed to establish business ventures in each of these districts in order to complete their prerequisites to fully unlock them, which would unlock us another trophy, and also which is where you'd see a lot of side activities come into play. Activities like mayhem and insurance fraud from previous Saints Row games make a return here, which I'm very glad to see. But of course, business ventures required a lot of money, so there was more backtracking involved during this as I built up the cash to purchase more by doing, the side hustles, the activities, collectibles, things like that. Now, on top of needing to complete the business ventures, whenever one was built, new threats would spawn in that district that we would then need to wipe out again, meaning a lot of backtracking. There was just a hell of a lot of backtracking during this stage, something that I should have worked on throughout the game rather than leaving it all till the end, because this was really not fun. There were also discoverable items that we could find scattered around the map that upon taking a picture would add them to my collectibles app, and we needed a total of 85. Now at this point I didn't have many, as you may know, a short while ago we unlocked the trophy for collecting 5, but seeing as I was going through each district anyway, it wasn't long before I was able to get the trophy. It was relatively easy. We also needed to complete all jobs on the Wanted app. The Wanted app is essentially an app where someone can put a bounty out on someone's head and we can then accept the bounty and hunt down the target. We don't need to know the reason why, we just do it for cash, XP and a trophy. Anyway, once I got to a point where I only needed to purchase the Saints Tower, while waiting for the cash to come in, I decided to focus on wiping out a big portion of the challenges in order to unlock the Jack of all trades trophy for acquiring every perk. And this did not go well. What realistically should have taken an hour or so max took nearly 3 times as long because the game is fucking buggy as shit, and decided it wasn't going to track any of my challenges. Legit at points it just wouldn't track any challenges at all, but then even when it did track them, it would only track certain ones, so I had to painstakingly go through each and every single challenge just to see what ones would work and what ones were a waste of time. And there were loads that said like 0 out of 2, 0 out of 3. That's just because the game just would not track anything that I did. Why the fuck has this not been fixed? 3 fucking DLC, a bunch of updates, and the game still can't track Epoxy Challenge. Absolutely ridiculous. And what's worse is that, as some of you may have heard, Volition have been shut down, or at least they're not anymore, let's just say that. And so that seemingly means that this won't be fixed, leaving this as a big deciding factor whether or not you can even get the platinum. Then again, to be fair, the whole game is like that. But this, imagine getting everything else done and this being the last thing and you can't get it because of challenges not tracking. I got stuck for like 20-30 minutes on the final perk trying to find a challenge that would track again, and it just seemed like nothing wanted to track any progress. Now, I hadn't even played co-op once during this whole game, so they can't even use the excuse that co-op broke my challenges. I was playing like completely single player. Eventually though, after a lot of stress and a lot of worry that I was wasting my time, we do complete all of the challenges, almost bringing an end to the cleanup stage and unlocking the Jack of all trades trophy. To finish up the cleanup stage, thankfully we only had a few more things to do. Now we had enough money, the first thing to do was to build the Saints Tower and start and complete the side mission Best Friends Forever. This mission is essentially the true ending of the game and finally allows the Saints to celebrate. This mission is really short and is really just one massive cutscene of the Saints singing karaoke. Completing this though does unlock us 2 trophies, one for singing karaoke with the Saints, aka getting the true ending, and another trophy for reaching Empire Tier 5. And obviously with our final venture now built, thankfully this one had no activities to do and the only thing we needed to do now was head back into the district, yep, some more backtracking, and wipe out all of the threats. This would then be our 15th district now complete, unlocking us the All Mine trophy, finally bringing an end to this goddamn cleanup stage. So with cleanup done, out of the way, the biggest challenge completely dealt with, now we could finally spend the rest of our time on this game going after the remaining miscellaneous trophies. The first trophy we unlocked was the Statement Pieces trophy for customizing a weapon, vehicle, clothing and our skin with a cutting edge material. Now, seeing as I never actually upgraded any of my weapons or vehicles during the game, our next 2 trophies we unlocked were linked directly to these. The first was the Kitted Out trophy for fully upgrading a weapon, and the second was the Mechanic trophy for fully upgrading a vehicle. Although I actually fully upgraded 5 vehicles and it just wouldn't pop, but we eventually got it done. We then took that same car and used the Pugnus Sanctus Day to destroy it for the bonus round trophy. Still keeping it car related, the next trophy I unlocked was the Hijack trophy for being pulled out of a car by a pedestrian. The easiest way to do this was as simple as pulling them out of the car and then waiting for them to do it back to you. We then found the closest ramp and performed a barrel roll in a car for the Spins trophy. Still keeping it car related, the next 3 trophies I went for were all linked to the special vehicle upgrades that we could unlock by completing challenges with certain vehicles, and there's a trophy for unlocking all of them. Luckily though, I already had most of these unlocked just through natural progression. The first trophy was to perform a quadruple backflip with super air control. Now this took a few attempts, but eventually after finding a ramp big enough to get enough air, I managed to pull off the quad flip for the trophy, a car named Simone. A couple of vehicles later, the next trophy I unlocked was the Heard You Like Wheels trophy for unlocking all of these special vehicle upgrades. And straight after unlocking that trophy, the next and final vehicle trophy I unlocked was the Free Refills trophy for using the Infinite Special Boost upgrade to fully use and refill the boost meter 3 times in a row, although it was closer to 5 or 6 times before the trophy actually popped. Next up, we used the Quantum Aperture skill that we acquired from completing one of the Venture's activities to shoot the driver out of a Marshall tank. Basically, the Quantum Aperture allows us to see through and shoot through targets. Effective with walls, but in this case, incredibly effective against Marshall tanks.
Good. I mapped out all the police towers. Got enough.
We then needed to use the Pinata launcher that we got as a reward for completing the Let's Pretend business venture, and using a reskinned crowbar to look like a pinata stick, smack the shit out of a pinata for the Fiesta Time trophy. And for our second to last trophy before needing to go online, I needed to complete 10 crimes of opportunity. This involved things like robbing a group of gang members or destroying armoured trucks. This was something that for the most part I had almost completed while going through cleanup, but as I was more focused on the objectives I needed at the time, I did skip a few that I could have easily done, which is why it's almost last on my list. It really didn't take long, it was just a matter of waiting for these opportunities to arise, and eventually enough of them did, unlocking us the Untouchable trophy. Now it was finally time to unlock our last trophy. What we needed to do here was head into a co-op session and then pull a prank on our co-op partner, and to do this all we needed to do was complete a random task like killing 10 enemies for example, and we could then pull the prank, which usually just turns the other player into something like a toilet or a mailbox. I thought this would be easy, but in my rush to get off the game, I completely neglected to realise that because everyone knows the co-op can break your game and make certain trophies and even progression impossible, no one wants to play it co-op. Most people had this turned off, and the people that didn't clearly didn't want me in their game. In the end, I actually used PSN profiles to get in touch with someone who was looking for the same trophy, and thankfully he was down to help, which meant we finally unlocked the Prankster trophy, our final trophy of the game, and of course, that platinum.
About halfway there. Don't back off. Halfway there. Don't back off.
And with that, we was now done. We had done what for many is impossible, and we got that platinum trophy, and let me tell you right now, it was not worth it. This game is just not fun. I'm not saying it doesn't have its moments, because it certainly does. Some of the missions and cutscenes are genuinely cool and semi-enjoyable, but for the most part, this is not something I would find myself ever coming back to. This is just not a Saints Row game. It may share the name, but it's not the same. I just don't understand why anyone at Volition thought this was a good concept, let alone a good game. Not only that, did they not test this game at all before launch? Like, did they not see the hundreds of bugs that aren't even hidden there in absolute plain sight? Of course they did, but they chose to ignore them, which unfortunately is becoming a common theme these days in gaming. Saying all that though, I'm not a developer, I haven't got a clue how to make a game, and I guess it really can't be that bad if I manage to sit through the entire thing and platinum it. But anyway guys, this brings us to the end of the video. If you guys enjoyed the video and want to help support the struggle in platinuming games like this, then a simple like down below and share would help me out a ton. It shows your support, and your support is always appreciated on the channel. I want you guys to let me know, what did you think of Saints Row 2022? Did you enjoy it, and how do you think this could have been improved? I'd love to get your thoughts down in the comments below. And of course, if you've made it this far and you haven't already, then why not? Hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on to stay up to date with everything I upload. I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.